Propositions 1 to 19 of the Elements of Theology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. The Elements of Theology by Proclus. Translated by Thomas Taylor. Proposition 1. All multitude participates in a certain respect of the One. For if it in no respect participates of the One, neither will the whole be one whole, nor each of the many of which the multitude consists, but there will also be a certain multitude arising from each of these, and this will be the case to infinity. Each of these infinites likewise will again be infinite multitude. For, participating in no respect of any one, neither according to the whole of itself, nor according to each of the many which it contains, it will be in every respect, and according to the whole, infinite. For each of the many which you may assume will either be one or not one, will either be many or nothing. But if each is nothing, that also which consists of these will be nothing. And if each is many, each will consist of infinites infinitely. And this not in capacity, but in energy. These things, however, are impossible. For neither does any being consist of infinites infinitely assumed, since there is not more than the infinite. But that which consists of all is more than each, nor is it possible for anything to be composed from nothing. All multitude, therefore, participates in a certain respect of the One. Proposition 2. Every thing which participates of the One is both one and not one. For if it is not the One itself, since it participates of the One, being something else besides the One, it suffers, or is passive to it according to participation, and sustains to become one. If, therefore, it is nothing besides the One, it is one alone, and does not participate of the One, but will be the One itself. But if it is something besides the One, which is not the One, but its participant, it is both not one and one. Not indeed such a one as the One itself, but one being as participating of the One. This, therefore, is not one, nor is it that which the One is, but it is one, and at the same time a participant of the One. Hence, being of itself not one, it is both one and not one, being something else besides the One. And so far indeed as it abounds, it is not one, but so far as it is passive to the One, it is one. Everything, therefore, which participates of the One is both one and not one. Proposition 3. Every thing which becomes one becomes so through the participation of the One, and is one so far as it suffers the participation of the One. For if things which are not one become one, they doubtless become so by a conjunction and communication with each other, and they sustain the presence of the One, not being that which the One itself is. Hence they participate of the One, so far as they suffer to become one. For if they are already one, they will not become one, since that which is does not become that which it is already. But if they become one from nothing, id. from the privation of the One, since a certain one is ingenerated in them, the One itself, is prior to them, and this ingenerated one must be derived from the One itself. Everything, therefore, which becomes one, becomes so through the participation of the One, etc. Proposition 4. Everything which is united is different from the One itself. For if it is united, it will participate in a certain respect of the One, so far as it is said to be united. That, however, which participates of the One is both one and not one. But the One itself is not both one and not one. For if this were the case, again, the one which is in it would have both these, and this would take place to infinity, there being no one itself at which it is possible to stop. But everything being one and not one, there will be something united which is different from the One. For if the One is the same with the united, it will be infinite multitude. And in a similar manner, each of the things of which the united consists will be infinite multitude. Everything, therefore, which is united is different from the One itself. Proposition 5. All multitude is posterior to the One. For if multitude is prior to the One, indeed, will participate of multitude. But multitude, which is prior to the One, will not participate of the One, since that multitude existed prior to the subsistence of the One. For it will not participate of that which is not, because that which participates of the One is one and at the same time not one, but the One will not yet subsist, that which is first being multitude. It is, however, impossible that there should be a certain multitude which in no respect whatever participates of the One. Multitude, therefore, is not prior to the One. But if multitude subsists simultaneously with the One, and they are naturally coordinate with each other, for nothing of time will prevent them being so, neither will the One of itself be many, nor will multitude be one, as being at one and the same time oppositely divided by nature, if neither is prior or posterior to the other. Hence multitude of itself will not be one, and each of the things that are in it will not be one, and this will be the case to infinity, which is impossible. Multitude, therefore, according to its own nature, participates of the One, and it will not be possible to assume anything of it which is not one. For, not being one, it will be an infinite consisting of infinites, as has been demonstrated. Hence, it entirely participates of the One. If, therefore, the One, which is of itself one, in no respect participates of multitude, multitude will be entirely posterior to the One, participating indeed of the One, but not being participated by the One. But if the One participates of multitude, subsisting indeed as one according to hyparxis, but as not one according to participation, the One will be multiplied, just as multitude is united on account of the One. The One, therefore, will communicate with multitude, and multitude with the One. But things which coalesce and communicate in a certain respect with each other, if indeed they are collected together by something else, that something else is prior to them. But if they themselves collect themselves, they are not opposed to each other, for opposites do not hasten to each other. Hence, if the One and multitude are oppositely divided, and multitude, so far as multitude is not one, and the one, so far as one is not multitude, neither will one of these subsisting in the other be one, and at the same time two. If also there is something prior to them which collects them, this will either be one or not one. But if it is not one, it will either be many or nothing. It will not, however, be many, lest multitude should be prior to the one, nor yet will it be nothing. For how can nothing congregate? It is therefore one alone. For this which is the one cannot be many, lest there should be a progression to infinity. It is therefore the one itself, and all multitude is from the one itself. Proposition 6. Concerning unity. Every multitude consists either of things united or of unities. For that each of things many will not be itself multitude alone, and again that each part of this will not be multitude alone, is evident. But if it is not multitude alone, it is either united or unities, henades. And if indeed it participates of the one, it is united. But if it consists of things of which that which is primarily united consists, it will be unities. For if there is the one itself, there is also that which primarily participates of it, and which is primarily united. But this consists of unities. For if it consists of things united, again things united consist of certain things, and this will be the case to infinity. It is necessary, however, that what is primarily united should consist of unities. And thus we have discovered what we proposed at first, viz. That every multitude consists either of things united or of unities. Proposition 7. Concerning producing causes and things produced. Everything productive of another is more excellent than the nature of the thing produced. For it is either more excellent, or less excellent, or equal. Hence, that which is produced from this will either also itself possess a power productive of something else, or it will be entirely unprolific. But if it is unprolific, according to this very thing it will be inferior to that by which it was produced. And through its inefficacy it is unequal to its cause which is prolific, and has the power of producing. But if it also is productive of other things, it either likewise produces that which is equal to itself, and this in a similar manner in all things, and all beings will be equal to each other, and no one thing will be better than another, that which produces always giving subsistence in a consequent series to that which is equal to itself. Or it produces that which is unequal to itself, and thus that which is produced will no longer be equal to that which produces it. For it is the province of equal powers to produce equal things. The progeny of these, however, will be unequal to each other, if that which produces indeed is equal to the cause prior to itself, but the thing posterior to it is unequal to it. Hence it is not proper that the thing produced should be equal to its producing cause. Moreover, neither will that which produces ever be less than that which is produced by it. For if it imparts essence to the thing produced, it will also supply it with essential power. But if it is productive of all the power which that posterior to it possesses, it will also be able to produce itself such as that posterior nature is. And if this be the case, it will also make itself more powerful. For impotency cannot hinder, productive power being present, nor a defect of will. since all things naturally aspire after good. Hence, if it is able to render another thing more perfect, it will also perfect itself before it perfects that which is posterior to itself. Hence, that which is produced is not equal to, nor more excellent than, its producing cause. The producing cause, therefore, is in every respect better than the nature of the thing produced. Proposition 8. Concerning the first good, which is called the good itself. That which is primarily good, and which is no other than the good itself, is the leader of all things that in any way whatever participate of good. For if all beings aspire after good, it is evident that what is primarily good is beyond beings. For if it is the same with some one being, either being and the good are the same, and this particular being will no longer be desirous of good, since it is that to which it is passive, i.e., since it is the good. For that which aspires after anything is indigent of that after which it aspires, and is different from it. And if some one being and the good are the same, being indeed will participate, and that which is participated in being will be the good. Hence, the good is a certain good inherent in a certain participant, and after which the participant alone aspires, but is not that which is simply good, and which all beings desire. For this is the common object of desire to all beings. But that which is inherent in a certain thing pertains to that alone which participates of it. Hence, that which is primarily good is nothing else than good. For whatever else you may add to it, you will diminish by the addition the good, and will make it to be a certain good, instead of that which is simply good. For that which is added not being the good, but something less than it, will by its own essence diminish the good. Proposition 9. Concerning that which is sufficient to itself. Every thing which is sufficient to itself, either according to essence or according to energy, is more excellent than that which is not sufficient to itself, but has the cause of its perfection suspended from another cause. For if all beings naturally aspire after good, and one thing supplies well-being from itself, but another is indigent of something else, the one indeed will have the cause of good present, but the other separate and apart. By how much the nearer, therefore, the former is to that which supplies the object of desire, i.e., to the good, by so much the more excellent will it be than that which is indigent of a separate cause, and externally receives the perfection of its hyparxis or its energy. For since that which is sufficient to itself is both similar and diminished, it is more similar to the good itself than that which is not self-sufficient. It is diminished indeed through participating of the good, and because it is not primarily the good. Yet it is in a certain respect allied to it, so far as it is able to possess good from itself. But to participate, and to participate through another, are more remote from that which is primarily good, and which is nothing else than good. Proposition 10. Every thing which is sufficient to itself is inferior to that which is simply good. For what else is a thing sufficient to itself than that which from itself and in itself possesses good? But this is now full of good, and participates of it, but is not that which is simply good. For that is better than participation and plenitude, as has been demonstrated. If therefore that which is sufficient to itself fills itself with good, that from which it fills itself will be more excellent than the self-sufficient, and will be above self-sufficiency, and neither will that which is simply good be indigent of anything. For it does not aspire after anything else, since by aspiring after it would be deficient of good. Nor is that which is simply good sufficient to itself, for thus it would be full of good, and would not be primarily the good. PROPOSITION XI. Concerning cause. All beings proceed from one first cause. For either there is not any cause of beings, or the causes of all finite things are in a circle, or the ascent is to infinity, and one thing is the cause of another, and the presubsistence of essence will in no respect stop. If, however, there is no cause of beings, there will neither be an order of things second and first, of things perfecting and perfected, of things adorning and adorned, of things generating and generated, and of agents and patients, nor will there be any science of beings. For the knowledge of causes is the work of science, and we are then said to know scientifically when we know the causes of things. But if causes revolve in a circle, the same things will be prior and posterior, more powerful and more imbecile. For every thing which produces is better than the nature of that which is produced. It makes, however, no difference to conjoin cause to effect, and to produce from cause through many or through fewer media. For cause will be more excellent than all the intermediate natures of which it is the cause. And by how much the more numerous the media, by so much greater is the causality of the cause. And if the addition of causes is to infinity, and there is always again another cause prior to another, there will be no science of any being, for there is not a knowledge of any thing infinite. But causes being unknown, neither will there be a science of the things consequent to the causes. If, therefore, it is necessary that there should be a cause of beings, and causes are distinct from the things caused, and there is not an ascent to infinity, there is a first cause of beings, from which, as from a root, everything proceeds. Some things indeed being nearer to, but others more remote from it. For that it is necessary there should be one principle has been demonstrated, because all multitude subsists posterior to the one. PROPOSITION XII. The principle and first cause of all beings is the good. For if all things proceed from one cause, as has been above demonstrated, it is requisite to call that cause either the good, or that which is more excellent than the good. But if it is more excellent than the good, whether is anything imparted by it to beings, and to the nature of beings, or nothing? And if indeed nothing is imparted by it, an absurdity will ensue. For we shall no longer preserve it in the order of cause, since it is everywhere requisite that something should be present from cause to things caused, and especially from the first cause from which all things are suspended, and on account of which every being exists. But if something is imparted by it to beings, in the same manner as there is by the good, there will be something better than goodness in beings imparted to them by the first cause. For being more excellent than and above the good, it can never bestow on secondary natures anything subordinate to that which is imparted by the nature posterior to itself. But what can be more excellent than goodness? Since we say that the more excellent itself is that which participates of a greater good. Hence, if that which is not good cannot be said to be more excellent than, it must entirely be secondary to the good. If likewise all beings aspire after the good, how is it any longer possible that there should be something prior to this cause? For if they also aspire after that which is prior to the good, how can they especially aspire after the good? But if they do not aspire after it, how is it possible that things which proceed from it should not desire the cause of all? Hence, if it is the good from which all beings are suspended, the good is the principle and first cause of all things. Proposition 13. Every good has the power of uniting its participants, and every union is good, and the good is the same with the one. For if the good is preservative of all beings, on which account also it is desirable to all things, but that which is preservative and connective of the essence of every thing is the one, for all things are preserved by the one, and dispersion removes everything from essence. If this be the case, the good will cause those things to which it is present to be one, and will connect and contain them according to union. And if the one is collective and connective of beings, it will perfect everything by its presence. Hence, therefore, it is good to all things to be united. If, however, union is of itself good, and good has the power of uniting, the simply good and the simply one are the same, uniting and at the same time benefiting beings. Hence it is that those things which after a manner fall off from the good are at the same time also deprived of the participation of the one, and those things which become destitute of the one, being filled with separation, are after the same manner likewise deprived of the good. Hence goodness is union, and union is goodness, and the one is that which is primarily good. Proposition 14. Concerning the immovable and self-motive principle or cause. Every being is either immovable or moved, and if moved, it is either moved by itself or by another. And if indeed it is moved by itself, it is self-motive, but if by another, it is alter-motive. Every thing therefore is either immovable, or self-motive, or alter-motive. For it is necessary, since there are alter-motive natures, that there should also be that which is immovable, and that the self-motive nature should subsist between these. For if everything alter-motive is moved in consequence of being moved by another thing, motions will either be in a circle, or they will proceed to infinity. But they will neither be in a circle nor have an infinite progression, since all beings are bounded by the principle of things, and that which moves is better than that which is moved. Hence there will be something immovable which first moves. But if this be the case, it is also necessary that there should be something which is self-motive. For if all things should stop, what will that be which is first moved? It cannot be that which is immovable, for it is not naturally adapted to be moved, nor that which is alter-motive, for that is moved by something else. It remains therefore that the self-motive nature is that which is primarily moved. For it is this also which conjoins alter-motive natures to that which is immovable, being in a certain respect a middle, moving and at the same time being moved. For of these, the immovable moves only, but the alter-motive is moved only. Everything therefore is either immovable, or self-motive, or alter-motive. Corollary. From these things likewise it is evident that of things which are moved, the self-motive nature is the first, but that of things which move, the immovable is the first. PROPOSITION XV. Concerning an incorporeal essence, and what the peculiarity of it is. Every thing which is converted to itself is incorporeal. For no body is naturally adapted to revert to itself. For if that which is converted to anything is conjoined with that to which it is converted, it is evident that all the parts of the body which is converted to itself will be conjoined with all the parts. For this it is for a thing to be converted to itself, when both that which is converted and that to which it is converted become one. This, however, is impossible in body, and in short, in all partible things. For the whole of that which is partible is not conjoined with the whole, on account of the separation of the parts, some of which are situated differently from others. No body, therefore, is naturally adapted to revert to itself, so as that the whole may be converted to the whole. Hence, if there is anything which has the power of reverting to itself, it is incorporeal and impartible. PROPOSITION XVI. Everything which is converted to itself has an essence separate from all body. For if it was inseparable from any body whatever, it would not have a certain energy separate from body. For thus energy would be more excellent than essence, since the latter indeed would be indigent of bodies, but the former would be sufficient to itself, and would not be in want of bodies. If therefore anything is essentially inseparable from body, it is also in a similar manner inseparable according to energy, or rather it is in a still greater degree inseparable. But if this be the case, it will not revert to itself. For that which is converted to itself, being something different from body, has an energy separate from body, and not either through or together with body, since the energy and that to which the energy is directed are not at all in want of body. Hence, that which is converted to itself is entirely separate from bodies. PROPOSITION XVII. Every thing which moves itself primarily is convertive to itself. For if it moves itself, and its motive energy is directed to itself, that which moves and that which is moved are at the same time one. For it either moves in a part, but is moved in a part, or the whole moves and is moved, or the whole moves, but a part is moved, or the contrary. But if one part indeed is that which moves, and another part is that which is moved, it will not be essentially self-motive, since it will consist of things which are not self-motive, but which appear indeed to be so, yet are not so essentially. If, however, the whole moves, but the part is moved, or the contrary, there will be a certain part in both which, according to one, moves, and at the same time is moved. And this is that which is primarily self-motive. If, however, one and the same thing moves and is moved, it will have the energy of moving to itself, being motive of itself. But it is converted to that towards which it energizes. Everything, therefore, which primarily moves itself is converted to itself. PROPOSITION XVIII. Every thing which imparts existence to others is itself that primarily which it communicates to the natures that are supplied by it with existence. For if it gives existence, and makes the communication from its own essence, that which it gives is subordinate to its own essence by the seventh proposition. But that which it is it is in a greater and more perfect degree, since everything which gives subsistence to a certain thing is better than, and not the same with it. For it is primarily, but the other is secondarily that which it is. For it is necessary either that each should be the same, and that there should be one definition of both, or that there should be nothing common and the same in both, or that the one should subsist primarily, but the other secondarily. If, however, indeed, there is the same definition of both, the one will no longer be cause, but the other effect; nor will the one subsist essentially, but the other by participation; nor will the one be the maker, but the other the thing made. But if they have nothing which is the same, the one will not give subsistence to the other by its very being, in consequence of communicating nothing to the existence of the other. Hence it remains that the one should be primarily that which it gives, but that the other should be secondarily that to which existence is given, the former supplying the latter from its very being. PROPOSITION XIX. Every thing which is primarily inherent in a certain nature of beings is present to all the beings that are arranged according to that nature, and this conformably to one reason, and after the same manner. For if it is not present to all of them after the same manner, but to some and not to others, it is evident that it was not primarily in that nature, but that it is in some things primarily, and in others secondarily, that sometimes participate of it. For that which at one time exists, but at another time does not exist primarily, nor of itself; but it is adventitious, and is imparted from some other place to the things in which it is thus inherent. End of Proposition 19. Propositions 20 to 39 of the Elements of Theology by Proclus, translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proposition 20. The essence of soul is beyond all bodies. The intellectual nature is beyond all souls, and the One is beyond all intellectual hypostases. For every body is movable by something else, but is not naturally adapted to move itself, but by the presence of soul is moved of itself, lives on account of soul, and when soul is present, is in a certain respect self-movable, but when it is absent, is alter-movable, as deriving this nature from soul, which is allotted a self-movable essence. For to whatever nature soul is present, to this it imparts self-motion. It is, however, by a much greater priority that which it imparts by its very being. Hence it is beyond bodies, which become self-movable by participation as being essentially self-movable. Again, however, soul, which is moved from itself, has an order secondary to the immovable nature, which subsists immovable according to energy. Because of all the natures that are moved, the self-movable essence is the leader, but of all that move, the immovable is the leader. If therefore soul, being moved from itself, moves other things, it is necessary that prior to it there should be that which moves immovably. But intellect moves being immovable, and energizing always with an invariable sameness of subsistence. For soul, on account of intellect, participates of perpetual intellectual energy, just as body, on account of soul, possesses the power of moving itself. For if perpetual intellection was primarily in soul, it would be inherent in all souls, in the same manner as the self-motive power. Hence, perpetual intellection is not primarily in soul. It is necessary, therefore, that prior to it there should be that which is primarily intellective, and hence intellect is prior to souls. Moreover, the One is prior to intellect. For intellect, though it is immovable, yet is not the One. For it intellectually perceives itself, and energizes about itself, and of the One, indeed, all beings, in whatever way they may exist, participate. But all beings do not participate of intellect. For those beings to whom intellect is present by participation, necessarily participate of knowledge, because intellectual knowledge is the principal and first cause of the Gnostic energy. The One, therefore, is beyond intellect, and there is no longer anything else beyond the One. For the One and the Good are the same. But the Good, as has been demonstrated, is the principle of all things. PROPOSITION XXI. That intellect is not the first cause. Every order beginning from a monad proceeds into a multitude coordinate to the monad, and the multitude of every order is referred to one monad. For the monad, having the relation of a principle, generates a multitude allied to itself. Hence, one series and one whole order has a decrement into multitude from the monad. For there would no longer be an order or a series if the monad remained of itself unprolific. But multitude is again referred to the one common cause of all coordinate natures. For that in every multitude which is the same, has not its progression from one of those things of which the multitude consists. For that which subsists from one alone of the many is not common to all, but eminently possesses the peculiarity of that one alone. Hence, since in every order there is a certain communion, connection, and sameness, through which some things are said to be coordinate, but others of a different order, it is evident that sameness is derived to every order from one principle. In each order, therefore, there is one monad prior to the multitude, which imparts one ratio and connection to the natures arranged in it, both to each other and to the whole. For let one thing be the cause of another, among things that are under the same series, but that which ranks as the cause of the one series must necessarily be prior to all in that series, and all things must be generated by it as coordinate, not so that each will be a certain particular thing, but that each will belong to this order. Corollary. From these things it is evident that both unity and multitude are inherent in the nature of body, that one nature has many natures co-suspended from it, and that many natures proceed from the one nature of the universe. It follows also that the order of souls originates from one first soul, and proceeds with diminution into the multitude of souls. That in the intellectual essence also there is an intellectual monad, and that a multitude of intellects proceeds from one intellect and is converted to it. That a multitude of unities likewise originates from the One, which is prior to all things, and that there is an extension of these unities to the One. Hence, after the first one, there are unities. After the first intellect, there are intellects. After the first soul, there are souls. And after total nature, there are natures. Proposition 22. Everything which subsists primarily and principally in each order is one, and is neither two, nor more than two, but is only begotten. For, if it be possible, let there be two things which thus subsist, since there will be the same impossibility if there are more than two; or let that which subsists primarily consist of both these. But if indeed it consists of both, it will again be one, and there will not be two things that are first. And if it be one of the two, each will not be first; nor if both are equally primary, will each have a principal subsistence. For if one of them is primary, but this is not the same with the other, what will it be in that order? For that subsists primarily which is nothing else than that which it is said to be; but each of these being different is, and at the same time is not that which it is said to be. If therefore these differ from each other, but they do not primarily differ so far as they are that which they are said to be, for this primarily suffers that which is the same, both will not be first, but that of which both participating are said to subsist primarily. Corollary. From these things it is evident that what is primarily being is one alone, and that there are not two primary beings, or more than two; that the first intellect is one alone, and that there are not two first intellects; and that the first soul is one. This is also the case with every form, such as the primarily beautiful and the primarily equal, and in a similar manner in all things. Thus also with respect to the form of animal and the form of man, the first of each is one, for the demonstration is the same. Proposition 23. Concerning the imparticipable. Every imparticipable gives subsistence from itself to things which are participated, and all participated hypostases are extended to imparticipable hyparxes. For that which is imparticipable, having the relation of a monad, as subsisting from itself and not from another, and being exempt from participants, generates things which are able to be participated. For either it remains of itself barren, and possesses nothing honourable, or it gives something from itself; and that which receives indeed from it participates, but that which is given subsists in a participated manner. But every thing which is something belonging to a certain thing by which it is participated, is secondary to that which is similarly present to all things, and which fills all things from itself. For that which is in one thing is not in others; but that which is similarly present to all things, in order that it may illuminate all things, is not in one thing, but is prior to all things. For it is either in all things, or in one of all, or it is prior to all. But that indeed which is in all things, being distributed into all, will again require another thing which may unite that which is distributed; and all things will no longer participate of the same thing, but this of one thing and that of another, the one being divided. But if it is in one of all things, it will no longer be common to all, but to one thing. Hence, if it is common to things able to participate, and is common to all, it will be prior to all; but this is imparticipable. Proposition 24. Every thing which participates is inferior to that which is participated, and that which is participated is inferior to that which is imparticipable. For that which participates being imperfect prior to participation, but becoming perfect through participation, is entirely secondary to that which is participated, so far as it is perfect by participating. For, so far as it was imperfect, it is inferior to that which it participates, which makes it to be perfect. That, however, which is participated, since it belongs to a certain thing, and not to all things, is again allotted an hyparxis, subordinate to that which is something belonging to all things, and not to a certain thing. For the latter is more allied to the cause of all, but the former is less allied to it. The imparticipable, therefore, is the leader of things, which are participated, but the latter are the leaders of participants. For, in short, the imparticipable is one prior to the many, but that which is participated in the many is one, and at the same time not one, and everything which participates is not one, and at the same time one. PROPOSITION XXV. Concerning the perfect. Every thing perfect proceeds to the generation of those things which it is able to produce, imitating the one principle of all. For, as that on account of its own goodness, unically gives subsistence to all beings, for the good and the one are the same, so that the boniform is the same with the unical, thus also those things which are posterior to the first, on account of their perfection, hasten to generate beings inferior to their own essence. For perfection is a certain portion of the good, and the perfect, so far as it is perfect, imitates the good. But the good gives subsistence to all things, so that the perfect likewise is productive according to nature of those things which it is able to produce, and that indeed which is more perfect, by how much the more perfect it is, by so much the more numerous are the progeny of which it is the cause. For that which is more perfect participates in a greater degree of the good. It is, therefore, nearer to the good. But this being the case, it is nearer to the cause of all, and thus it is the cause of a greater number of effects. That, however, which is more imperfect, by how much the more imperfect it is, by so much the less numerous are the effects of which it is the cause. For, being more remote from that which produces every thing, it gives subsistence to fewer effects. For to that which gives subsistence to, or adorns, or perfects, or connects, or vivifies, or fabricates all things, that nature is more allied which produces a greater number of each of these, but that is more remote which produces a less number of each. Corollary. From these things it is evident that the nature which is most remote from the principle of all is unprolific, and is not the cause of anything. For if it generated a certain thing, and had something posterior to itself, it is evident that it would no longer be most remote, but that which it produced would be more remote than itself from the principle of all things, but it would be nearer to productive power, and besides this would imitate the cause which is productive of all beings. PROPOSITION XXVI. Every cause which is productive of other things, itself abiding in itself, produces the natures posterior to itself, and such as are successive. For if it imitates the one, but that immovably gives subsistence to things posterior to itself, every thing which produces will possess in a similar manner the cause of productive energy. But the one gives subsistence to things immovably. For if through motion, the motion will be in it, and being moved, it will no longer be the one, in consequence of being changed from the one. But if motion subsists together with it, it will also be from the One, and either there will be a progression to infinity, or the One will produce immovably, and every thing which produces will imitate the producing cause of all things. For everywhere, from that which is primarily, that which is not primarily derives its subsistence, so that the nature which is productive of certain things originates from that which is productive of all things. Hence, every producing cause produces subsequent natures from itself. And while productive natures abide in themselves undiminished, secondary natures are produced from them. For that which is in any respect diminished cannot abide such as it is. PROPOSITION XXVII. Every producing cause, on account of its perfection and abundance of power, is productive of secondary natures. For if it produced not on account of the perfect, but through a defect according to power, it would not be able to preserve its own order immovable. For that which imparts existence to another thing through defect and imbecility imparts subsistence to it through its own mutation and change in quality. But every thing which produces remains such as it is, and in consequence of thus remaining, that which is posterior to it proceeds into existence. Hence, being full and perfect, it gives subsistence to secondary natures immovably and without diminution, it being that which it is, and neither being changed into them, nor diminished. For that which is produced is not a distribution into parts of the producing cause, since this is neither appropriate to the generating energy, nor to generating causes. Nor is it a transition, for it does not become the matter of that which proceeds, since it remains such as it is, and that which is produced is different from it. Hence, that which generates is firmly established undiminished, through prolific power multiplies itself, and from itself imparts secondary hypostases. PROPOSITION XXVIII. Every producing cause gives subsistence to things similar to itself, prior to such as are dissimilar. For since that which produces is necessarily more excellent than that which is produced, they can never be simply the same with each other, and equal in power. But if they are not the same and equal, but different and unequal, they are either entirely separated from each other, or they are both united and separated. If, however, they are entirely separated, they will not accord with each other, and nowhere will that which proceeds from a cause sympathize with it. Hence, neither will one of these participate of the other, being entirely different from it. For that which is participated gives communion to its participant, with reference to that of which it participates. Moreover, it is necessary that the thing caused should participate of its cause, as from thence possessing its essence. But if that which is produced is partly separated from, and partly united to its producing cause, if indeed it suffers each of these equally, it will equally participate and not participate, so that after the same manner it will both have essence and not have it from the producing cause. And if it is more separated from than united to it, the thing generated will be more foreign than allied to that by which it is generated, will be more unadapted than adapted to it, and be more deprived of than possess sympathy with it. If, therefore, the things which proceed from causes are allied to them according to their very being, have sympathy with them, are naturally suspended from them, and aspire after contact with them, desiring good, and obtaining the object of their desire through the cause of their existence. If this be the case, it is evident that things produced are in a greater degree united to their producing causes than separated from them. Things, however, which are more united are more similar than dissimilar to the natures to which they are especially united. Every producing cause, therefore, gives subsistence to things similar to itself prior to such as are dissimilar. PROPOSITION XXIX. Every progression is effected through a similitude of secondary to first natures. For if that which produces gives subsistence to similars prior to dissimilars, the similitude derived from the producing causes will give subsistence to the things produced. For similars are rendered similar through similitude, and not through dissimilitude. If, therefore, progression in its diminution preserves a certain sameness of that which is generated with that which generates, and exhibits that which is posterior to the generator, such in a secondary degree as the generator is primarily, it will have its subsistence through similitude. PROPOSITION XXX. Every thing which is produced from a certain thing without a medium abides in its producing cause, and proceeds from it. For if every progression is effected while primary natures remain permanent, and is accomplished through similitude, similars being constituted prior to dissimilars, if this be the case, that which is produced will in a certain respect abide in its producing cause. For that which entirely proceeds will have nothing which is the same with the abiding cause, but will be perfectly separated from it, and will not have anything common with and united to it. Hence it will abide in its cause, in the same manner as that also abides in itself. If, however, it abides, but does not proceed, it will in no respect differ from its cause, nor will it, while that abides, be generated something different from it. For if it is something different, it is separated and apart from its cause. If, however, it is apart, but the cause abides, it will proceed from the cause, in order that while it abides, it may be separated from it. So far, therefore, as that which is produced has something which is the same with the producing cause, it abides in it. But so far as it is different, it proceeds from it. Being, however, similar, it is in a certain respect at once both the same and different. Hence it abides, and at the same time proceeds, and it is neither of these without the other. PROPOSITION XXXI. Every thing which proceeds from a certain thing essentially is converted to that from which it proceeds. For if it should proceed indeed, but should not return to the cause of this progression, it would not aspire after its cause. For everything which desires is converted to the object of its desire. Moreover, everything aspires after good, and to each thing the attainment of it is through the proximate cause. Every thing, therefore, aspires after its cause. For well-being is derived to everything from that through which its existence is derived. But appetite is first directed to that through which well-being is derived, and conversion is to that to which appetite is first directed. PROPOSITION XXXII. All conversion is effected through the similitude of the things converted to that to which they are converted. For every thing which is converted hastens to be conjoined with its cause, and aspires after communion and colligation with it. But similitude binds all things together, just as dissimilitude separates and disjoins all things. If, therefore, conversion is a certain communion and contact, but all communion and all contact are through similitude, If this be the case, all conversion will be effected through similitude. Proposition 33. Every thing which proceeds from a certain thing and is converted to it has a circular energy. For if it reverts to that from which it proceeds, it conjoins the end to the beginning, and the motion is one and continued, one motion being from that which abides, but the other being directed to the abiding cause. Hence, all things proceed in a circle from causes to causes, greater and less circles being continually formed of conversions, some of which are to the natures immediately placed above the things that are converted, but others are to still higher natures, and so on as far as to the principle of all things. For all things proceed from this principle, and are converted to it. Proposition 34. Every thing which is converted according to nature makes its conversion to that from which also it had the progression of its proper hypostasis. For if it is converted according to nature, it will have an essential desire of that to which it is converted. But if this be the case, the whole being of it is suspended from that to which it makes an essential conversion, and it is essentially similar to it. Hence also it has a natural sympathy with, as being allied to the essence of it. If this, however, be the case, either the being of both is the same, or the one is derived from the other, or both are allotted similitude from a certain other one. But if the being of both is the same, how is the one naturally converted to the other? And if both are from a certain one, it will be according to nature for both to be converted to that one. It remains, therefore, that the one must derive its being from the other. But if this be the case, the progression will be from that to which the conversion is according to nature. Corollary. From these things, therefore, it is evident that intellect is the object of desire to all things, that all things proceed from intellect, and that the whole world, though it is perpetual, possesses its essence from intellect. For it is not prevented from proceeding from intellect because it is perpetual. For neither because it is always arranged is it not converted to intellect, but it always proceeds, is essentially perpetual, and is always converted, and indissoluble according to order. Proposition 35. Everything caused abides in, proceeds from, and returns or is converted to its cause. For if it alone abided, it would in no respect differ from its cause, being without separation and distinction from it. For progression is accompanied with separation. But if it alone proceeded, it would be unconjoined and deprived of sympathy with its cause, having no communication with it whatever. And if it were alone converted, how can that which has not its essence from the cause be essentially converted to that which is foreign to its nature? But if it should abide and proceed, but should not be converted, how will there be a natural desire to everything of well-being and of good, and an excitation to its generating cause? And if it should proceed and be converted, but should not abide, how, being separated from its cause, will it hasten to be conjoined with it? For it was unconjoined prior to its departure, since if it had been conjoined, it would entirely have abided in it. But if it should abide and be converted, but should not proceed, how can that which is not separated be able to revert to its cause? For every thing which is converted resembles that which is resolved into the nature from which it is essentially divided. It is necessary, however, either that it should abide alone, or be converted alone, or alone proceed, or that the extremes should be bound to each other, or that the medium should be conjoined with each of the extremes, or that all should be conjoined. Hence it remains that every thing must abide in its cause, proceed from, and be converted to it. PROPOSITION XXXVI. Of all things which are multiplied according to progression, the first are more perfect than the second than those posterior to them, and after the same manner successively. For if progressions separate productions from their causes, and there are diminutions of things secondary with respect to such as are first, it follows that first natures, in proceeding, are more conjoined with their causes, being as it were germinations from them. But second natures are more remote from their causes, and in a similar manner such as are successive. Things, however, which are nearer and more allied to their causes are more perfect. For causes are more perfect than things caused. But things which are more remote are more imperfect, being dissimilar to their causes. PROPOSITION XXXVII. Of all things which subsist according to conversion, the first are more imperfect than the second, and the second than those that follow, but the last are the most perfect. For if conversions are effected in a circle, and conversion is directed to that from which progression is derived, but progression is from that which is most perfect, hence conversion is directed to the most perfect. And if conversion first begins from that in which progression terminates, but progression terminates in that which is most imperfect, conversion will begin from the most imperfect. Hence, in things which subsist according to conversion, such as are most imperfect are the first, but such as are most perfect the last. PROPOSITION XXXVIII. Every thing which proceeds from certain numerous causes is converted through as many causes as those are through which it proceeds, and all conversion is through the same things as those through which progression is effected. For since each of these takes place through similitude, that indeed which has a transition immediately from a certain thing is also immediately converted to it. For the similitude here is without a medium, but that which requires a medium in proceeding requires also a medium according to conversion. For it is necessary that each should be effected with reference to the same thing. Hence the conversion will be first to the medium, and afterwards to that which is better than the medium. Through such things, therefore, as being is derived to each thing, through so many well-being also is derived, and vice versa. PROPOSITION XXXIX. Every being is either alone essentially converted, or vitally, or also gnostically. For either it alone possesses being from its cause, or life together with being, or it likewise receives from thence a gnostic power. So far, therefore, as it alone is, it makes an essential conversion; but so far as it lives a vital, and so far as it likewise knows, a gnostic conversion. For in such a way as it proceeded from its cause, such also is the mode of its conversion to it, and the measures of its conversion are defined by the measures according to progression. Desire, therefore, is to some things according to being alone, this desire being an aptitude to the participation of causes; but to others it is according to life, being a motion to more excellent natures; and to others it is according to knowledge, being a co-sensation of the goodness of causes. And of Proposition 39. Propositions 40 to 59 of the Elements of Theology by Proclus, translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proposition 40. Of all things which proceed from another cause, those which exist from themselves, and which are allotted a self-subsistent essence, are the leaders. For if everything which is sufficient to itself, either according to essence or according to energy, is more excellent than that which is suspended from another cause, but that which produces itself, since it produces the being of itself, is sufficient to itself with respect to essence, but that which is alone produced by another is not sufficient to itself, and the self-sufficient is more allied to the good, but things more allied and similar to their causes subsist from cause prior to such as are dissimilar. This being the case, things which are produced by themselves and are self-subsistent are more ancient than those which proceed into existence from another cause alone. For either there will be nothing self-subsistent, or the good is a thing of this kind, or the first things that subsist from the good. But if there is nothing self-subsistent, there will not in reality be in anything self-sufficiency, nor will it be in the good, since that being the one is better than self-sufficiency. It is also the good itself, and not that which possesses the good. But if the good was self-subsistent, in consequence of itself producing itself, it will not be the one. For that which proceeds from the one is not the one, and it would proceed from itself if it was self-subsistent, so that the one would at the same time be one and not one. Hence it is necessary that the self-subsistent should be posterior to the first, and it is evident that it will be prior to things which alone proceed from another cause, for it has a more principal subsistence than these, and is more allied to the good, as has been demonstrated. Proposition 41. Everything which is in another is alone produced by another, but everything which is in itself is self-subsistent. For that which is in another thing and is indigent of a subject can never be generative of itself, for that which is naturally adapted to generate itself does not require another seat, because it is contained by itself and is preserved in itself apart from a subject. But that which abides and is able to be established in itself is productive of itself proceeding into itself, and being connective of itself, and thus it is in itself, as the thing caused in its cause. For it is not in itself as in place, or as in a subject. For place is different from that which is in place, and that which is in a subject is different from the subject. But this which is in itself is the same with that in which it is inherent, for it is self-subsistent, and it is in such a manner in itself, as that which is from a cause is in the cause. Proposition 42. Everything self-subsistent is convertive to itself. For if it proceeds from itself, it will also make a conversion to itself. For to that from which progression is derived, to that a conversion coordinate to the progression is directed. For if it alone proceeded from itself, but having proceeded was not converted to itself, it would never aspire after its proper good, and that which it is able to impart to itself. Every cause, however, is able to impart to that which proceeds from it, together with the essence which it gives, well being conjoined with this essence. Hence, that which is self-subsistent will impart this to itself. This, therefore, is the proper good to that which is self-subsistent, and hence this will not be the object of desire to that which is not converted to itself. But not desiring this, it will not obtain it, and not obtaining it, it will be imperfect and not sufficient to itself. If, however, self-sufficiency and perfection pertain to anything, they must pertain to that which is self-subsistent. Hence it will obtain its proper good, and will be converted to itself. PROPOSITION XLIII. Every thing which is convertive to itself is self-subsistent. For if it is converted to itself according to nature, it is perfect in the conversion to itself, and will possess essence from itself. For to everything essential progression is from that to which conversion according to nature is directed. If, therefore, it imparts well-being to itself, it will likewise undoubtedly impart being to itself, and will be the lord of its own hypostasis. Hence, that which is able to revert to itself is self-subsistent. PROPOSITION XLIV. Every thing which is convertive to itself according to energy is also converted to itself essentially. For if it is capable of being converted to itself in energy, but is without conversion in its essence, it will be more excellent according to energy than according to essence, the former being convertive, but the latter without conversion. For that which depends on itself is better than that which alone depends on another, and that which has a power of preserving itself is more perfect than that which is alone preserved by another. If, therefore, it is convertive to itself according to the energy proceeding from essence, it will also be allotted a convertive essence, so that it will not alone energize towards itself, but will depend on itself, and will be contained, connected, and perfected by itself. PROPOSITION XLV. Everything self-subsistent is unbegotten. For if it is generated, because generated indeed, it will be imperfect of itself, and will be indigent of perfection from another. Because, however, it produces itself, it is perfect and sufficient to itself. For everything generated is perfected by another which imparts generation to it, not yet existing. For generation is a path from the imperfect to its contrary, the perfect. But if anything produces itself, it is always perfect, being always present with the essence of itself, or rather being inherent in that which is perfective of essence. PROPOSITION XLVI. Everything self-subsistent is incorruptible. For if it should be corrupted, it would desert itself, and would be without itself. This, however, is impossible. For, being one thing, it is at the same time cause and the thing caused. But everything which is corrupted, departing from the cause of itself, is corrupted. For so far as it adheres to that which contains, connects, and preserves it, it is connected and preserved. But that which is self-subsistent never leaves its cause, because it does not desert itself, for it is the cause of itself. Everything, therefore, self-subsistent is incorruptible. Proposition 47. Everything self-subsistent is impartible and simple. For if it is partible, being self-subsistent, it will constitute itself partible, and the whole will be converted to itself, and all will be in all itself. This, however, is impossible. Hence that which is self-subsistent is impartible. But it is also simple. For if a composite, one thing in it will be less, but another more excellent, and the more will be derived from the less excellent, and the less from the more excellent, if the whole proceeds from itself. Farther still, it would not be sufficient to itself, being indigent of the elements of itself of which it consists. Everything, therefore, which is self-subsistent is simple. Proposition 48. Concerning the perpetual, in order to demonstrate that the world is perpetual. Everything which is not perpetual is either a composite or subsists in another. For either it is dissoluble into those things of which it consists, and is entirely composed from the things into which it is dissolved, or it is indigent of a subject, and leaving the subject it departs into non-entity. But if it is simple in itself, it will be indissoluble, and incapable of being dissipated. Proposition 49. Everything self-subsistent is perpetual. For there are two modes according to which it is necessary a thing should not be perpetual, the one arising from composition, and the other from a subsistence in something else, as in a subject. That which is self-subsistent, however, is neither a composite, but simple, nor in another, but in itself. Hence it is perpetual. Proposition 50. Everything which is measured by time, either according to essence or according to energy, is generation, so far as it is measured by time. For if it is measured by time, it will be adapted to it to be or to energize in time, and the was and the will be, which differ from each other, pertain to it. For if the was and the will be were the same according to number, it would suffer nothing by time proceeding, and always having one part prior and another posterior. If, therefore, the was and the will be are different, that which is measured by time is becoming to be, or rising into existence, and never is, but proceeds together with time, by which it is measured, existing in a tendency to being. It likewise does not stop in the same state of being, but is always receiving another and another to be, just as the now in time is always another and another, through the progression of time. Hence it is not a simultaneous whole, for it subsists in a dispersion of temporal extension, and is coextended with time. This, however, is to possess being in non-being, for that which is becoming to be is not that which is become. Such a kind of being, therefore, as this is generation. Proposition 51. Everything self-subsistent is essentially exempt from the natures which are measured by time. For if that which is self-subsistent is unbegotten, it will not, according to existence, be measured by time. For generation is conversant with the nature which is measured by time. Hence, nothing self-subsistent has its being in time. PROPOSITION LII. Everything eternal is a whole which subsists at once. And whether it has its essence alone eternal, it will possess the whole at once present, nor will it have this thing pertaining to itself now subsisting, but that afterwards which as yet is not. But as much as is possible, it now possesses the whole without diminution and without extension. Or whether it has its energy as well as its essence at once present, it possesses this also collectively, abiding in the same measure of perfection, and as it were, fixed immovably and without transition according to one and the same boundary. For if the eternal, as the name denotes, is perpetual being, but to be sometimes, and to subsist in becoming to be, are different from perpetual being, it is not proper that it should have one thing prior and another posterior. For if it had, it would be generation and not being. But where there is neither prior nor posterior, nor was and will be, but alone to be, and this a whole, there everything subsists at once that which it is. The same thing also takes place with respect to the energy of that which is eternal. Corollary. From this it is evident that eternity is the cause to wholes of their existence as wholes, since everything which is eternal, either according to essence or according to energy, has the whole of its essence or energy present with itself. PROPOSITION LIII. Concerning eternity and eternal natures. Eternity subsists prior to all eternal natures, and time exists prior to everything which subsists according to time. For if everywhere the natures which are participated are prior to their participants, and imparticipables are prior to participated natures, it is evident that the eternal is one thing, the eternity which is in the eternal another, and eternity itself another. And the first of these indeed subsists as a participant, the second as a thing participated, and the third as an imparticipable. That also which is in time is one thing, for it is a participant. The time which is in this is another thing, for it is participated. And the time prior to this is another thing, for it is imparticipable. Everywhere also, that which is imparticipable is in all things the same, but that which is participated is in those things only by which it is participated. For there are many eternal and many temporal natures, in all of which eternity subsists according to participation. The time also, which is in temporal natures, subsists in a distributed manner, but the time which they participate is indivisible. And there is one time prior to both these. Eternity itself likewise is an eternity of eternities, and time itself is a time of times, and they give subsistence, the one to participated eternity, but the other to participated time. PROPOSITION LIV. Every eternity is the measure of eternal natures, and every time is the measure of things in time, and these are the only two measures of life and motion in beings. For everything which measures, either measures according to a part, or it measures the whole at once when it is adapted to that which is measured. That which measures, therefore, according to the whole is eternity, but that which measures according to parts is time. Hence there are only two measures, the one of things eternal, but the other of things in time. PROPOSITION LV. Everything which subsists according to time either subsists through the whole of time, or has its hypostasis once in a part of time. For if all progressions are through similitude, and things more similar to first natures subsist in union with them to such as are dissimilar, but it is impossible for things which are generated in a part of time to be conjoined with eternal natures. For, as being generated, they differ from first natures which are self-subsistent, and as existing once, they are separated from things which always exist. But the media between these are such things as are partly similar and partly dissimilar to them. This being the case, the medium between things which are once generated and those that exist always is either that which is always becoming to be, or that which is once, or that which is not truly being. It is, however, impossible it should be that which once only truly is. And that which is once not truly being is the same with that which is becoming to be. Hence the medium is not that which is once only. It remains, therefore, that the medium between both is that which is always becoming to be, being conjoined indeed with the worse of the two through becoming to be, but through subsisting always, imitating an eternal nature. Corollary. From these things it is evident that perpetuity is twofold, the one indeed being eternal, but the other subsisting according to time; the one also being a stable, but the other a flowing perpetuity; and the one indeed having its being collected, and the whole subsisting at once, but the other diffused and expanded according to temporal extension; and the one being a whole of itself, but the other consisting of parts, each of which is separate according to prior and posterior. PROPOSITION LVI. Everything which is produced by secondary natures is produced in a greater degree by prior and more causal natures, by whom such as are secondary were also produced. For if that which is secondary has the whole of its essence from that which is prior to it, its power of producing is also derived from thence. For powers in producing causes are essentially productive, and give completion to the essence of them. But if it is allotted the power of producing from a superior cause, it will possess from that its existence as the cause of things of which it is the cause, and its power of giving subsistence to other things will be measured from thence. If, however, this be the case, the things proceeding from it are effects through that which is prior to it. For the one perfects a cause, and the other the thing caused. But if this be the case, the thing caused is from thence rendered such as it is. Moreover, that it is also in a greater degree perfected from thence is evident. For if that which is first gives to that which is second the cause of producing, it will primarily possess this cause. And on this account, that which is secondary generates, receiving from thence a secondary generative power. If, however, the one becomes productive through participation, but the other in a way superior to participation and primarily, that will be in a greater degree a cause which imparts generative power to another thing proximate to its own nature. PROPOSITION LVII. Every cause both energizes prior to the thing caused, and gives subsistence to a greater number of effects posterior to it. For, so far as it is cause, it is more perfect and more powerful than that which is posterior to it, and in consequence of this is the cause of a greater number of effects. For it is the province of a greater power to produce more, of an equal power to produce equal, and of a less power to produce a less number of effects. And the power which is able to effect greater things among similars is also capable of effecting such as are less. But that which is able to effect such as are less is not necessarily capable of producing such as are greater. If, therefore, the cause is more powerful, it is productive of more numerous effects. Moreover, such effects as the thing caused is able to produce, the cause is in a greater degree able to produce. For everything which is produced by secondary natures is in a greater degree produced by such as are prior and more causal. The cause, therefore, gives subsistence together with the thing caused to such effects as the thing caused is naturally adapted to produce. But if likewise it produces prior to it, it is indeed evident that it energizes prior to the thing caused, according to the energy which is productive of it. Every cause, therefore, energizes prior to the thing caused, and together with it, and posterior to it, gives subsistence to other things. Corollary. Hence it is evident that of such things as soul is the cause, intellect also is the cause, but that soul is not also the cause of such things as intellect is the cause. But intellect energizes prior to soul, and such things as soul imparts to secondary natures, intellect also imparts in a greater degree. Likewise, when soul no longer energizes, intellect imparts by illumination the gifts of itself to those things to which soul does not impart herself. For that which is inanimate, so far as it participates of form, participates of intellect, and the production of intellect. Moreover, of such things as intellect is the cause, the good also is the cause, but not vice versa. For the privations of forms subsist from the good, since all things are from thence. But intellect, being form, does not give subsistence to privation. PROPOSITION LVIII. Everything which is produced by many is more compounded than that which is produced by fewer causes. For if every cause imparts something to that which proceeds from it, more numerous causes will impart a greater number of gifts, but less numerous causes a less number. Hence, of participants, some will consist of a greater number of things, but others of a less number, of which each participates, some indeed through a progression from a greater number of causes, but others from a less. Those, however, which proceed from a greater number of causes are more compounded, but those from a less number of the same causes are more simple. Everything, therefore, which is produced by a greater number of causes is more compounded, but that which is produced by a less number is more simple. For the more compounded participates of those things of which the more simple participates, but the contrary to this is not true. Proposition 59. Everything which is essentially simple is either better or worse than composite natures. For if such beings as are the extremes of things are produced by fewer and more simple causes, but such as are in the middle from a greater number of causes, the latter indeed will be composites, but of the former some are more simple according to that which is better, but others according to that which is worse. That the extremes, however, are produced by fewer causes is evident, because such natures as are higher begin to produce prior to such as are subordinate, and extend beyond them to things to which subordinate natures do not proceed through a diminution of power. For on this account also, the last of things, i.e., matter, is most simple, as well as the first of things, because it proceeds from the first alone. With respect to simplicity, however, one kind subsists according to that which is better than all composition, but another according to that which is worse, and there is the same reasoning in all things. End of Proposition 59. Propositions 60 to 79 of the Elements of Theology by Proclus, translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proposition 60. Everything which is the cause of a greater number of effects is better than that which is allotted a power of producing a less number, and which produces the parts of those things to the wholes of which the other gives subsistence. For if the one is the cause of a less, but the other of a greater number of effects, but the former are parts of the latter, that which gives subsistence to a greater number of effects will produce all that the other produces, but not vice versa. Hence, the former of these two is more powerful and more comprehensive. For as that which proceeds is to that which proceeds, so is one productive power to another, when assumed with reference to each other. For that which is able to effect a greater number of things possesses a greater and more total power. But this is nearer to the cause of all things. That, however, which is nearer to this cause is in a greater degree good, just as the cause of all is the good itself. Hence, that which is the cause of a greater number of effects is essentially more excellent than that which produces a less number. Proposition 61. Every power which is impartible is greater, but when divided is less. For if it is divided, it proceeds into multitude, and if this be the case, it becomes more remote from the one. But in consequence of this, it is able to effect a less number of things, through departing from the one, and the unity which contains it, and will be imperfect, since the good of everything consists in union. Proposition 62. Every multitude which is nearer to the one is less in quantity than things more remote from it, but is greater in power. For that which is nearer to is more similar to the one, but the one gives subsistence to all things without having any multitude in itself. Hence, that which is more similar to it, being the cause of a greater number of effects, since the one is the cause of all things, has more the form of unity, and is more impartible, because that is one. As therefore that which is less multiplied is more allied to the one, so likewise, as being allied to the cause of all things, it is productive of a greater number of effects. Hence it is more powerful. Corollary. From these things it is evident that there are more corporeal natures than souls, more souls than intellectual natures, and more intellects than divine unities. And there is the same reasoning in all things. PROPOSITION LXIII. Every thing which is imparticipable gives subsistence to twofold orders of participated natures. One indeed in things which sometimes participate, but the other in things which always and connascently participate. For that which is always participated is more similar to the imparticipable than that which is sometimes participated. Hence, before the imparticipable establishes that which is sometimes, it will establish that which is always participable, and which by being participated differs from that which is posterior to it, but by the always is more allied and more similar to the imparticipable. Nor are there alone things which are sometimes participated, for prior to these are the natures which are always participated, through which these also are bound to imparticipables according to a certain well-ordered progression. Nor are there alone things which are sometimes participated, for these possessing an inextinguishable power, since they are always, are prolific of other things which are sometimes participated, and as far as to these the diminution proceeds. Corollary. From hence it is evident that of the unions proceeding from the one, and which illuminate beings, some are always, but others sometimes participated. Intellectual participations likewise are in a similar manner twofold, as also are the animations of souls, and the participations of other forms. For beauty, similitude, permanency, and sameness, being imparticipable, are participated by natures which always participate, and secondarily by those that sometimes participate according to the same order. PROPOSITION LXIV. Every monad which ranks as a principle gives subsistence to a twofold number, one indeed of self-perfect hypostases, but the other of illuminations which possess their hypostasis in other things. For if progression is according to diminution, through things appropriate to producing causes, perfect natures will proceed from the all-perfect, and through these as media, imperfect natures will proceed in a well-ordered progression, so that some indeed will be self-perfect hypostases, but others will be imperfect, and these latter will become the forms of participants, for being imperfect, they will be indigent of subjects in their very nature. But the self-perfect hypostases will produce things which participate of themselves, for being perfect, they will indeed fill these from themselves, and establish them in themselves. But they will require nothing of inferior natures to their own subsistence. Self-perfect hypostases, therefore, through their separation into multitude, are indeed diminished with respect to their principal monad. But through their self-perfect hyparxis, they are in a certain respect assimilated to it. But imperfect hypostases, in consequence of subsisting in other things, are remote from that which subsists from itself, and through their imperfection are separated from that which perfects all things. Progressions, however, are through similars, as far as to natures which are entirely dissimilar. Every monad, therefore, which ranks as a principle, gives subsistence to a twofold number. Corollary. From these things it is evident that of the unities, some are self-perfect proceeding from the one, but others are illuminations of unions; and, with respect to intellects, that some of them are self-perfect essences, but others belong to animated natures, being only the images of souls; and thus neither is every union a God, but this is true of a self-perfect unity alone; nor is every intellectual peculiarity an intellect, but an essential peculiarity alone is entitled to this appellation; nor is every illumination of soul a soul, but there are also images of souls. PROPOSITION LXV. Every thing which has any subsistence whatever, either subsists according to cause, so as to have the form of a principle, or according to hyparxis, or according to participation, after the manner of an image. For either that which is produced is seen in that which produces, as pre-existing in cause, because every cause antecedently comprehends in itself the thing caused, being that primarily which the thing caused is secondarily; or that which produces is seen in that which is produced. For the latter, participating of the former, exhibits in itself secondarily that which the producing cause is primarily. Or each thing is beheld in its own order, and is neither seen in the cause, nor in the effect. For the cause subsists more excellently than that which exists out of the cause; but that which is in the effect is less excellent than that which exists out of the cause, but is not in any thing else. It is, however, necessary there should be that which after this manner is. But every thing subsists according to hyparxis in its own order. PROPOSITION LXVI. All beings with reference to each other are either wholes, or parts, or the same, or different. For either some of them comprehend, but the rest are comprehended, or they neither comprehend, nor are comprehended; and they either suffer something which is the same, as participating of one thing, or they are separated from each other. But if they comprehend, they will be wholes; and if they are comprehended, parts. If also many things participate of one thing, they are the same according to this one; but if they are alone many things, so far as they are many, they will be different from each other. PROPOSITION LXVII. Every wholeness, olates, is either prior to parts, or consists of parts, or is in a part. For the form of each thing is either surveyed in its cause, and we call that which subsists in its cause a whole prior to parts; or it is seen in the parts which participate of it, and this in a twofold respect. For it is either seen in all the parts together, and this is a whole consisting of parts, any part of which being absent diminishes the whole; or it is seen in each of the parts, so that the part also becomes according to participation a whole, which makes the part to be a whole partially. The whole, therefore, which is according to hyparxis, consists of parts; but the whole which is prior to parts is according to cause; and the whole which is in a part is according to participation. For this also according to an ultimate diminution is a whole, so far as it imitates the whole which consists of parts, when it is not any casual part, but is capable of being assimilated to the whole, of which the parts also are wholes. PROPOSITION LXVIII. Every whole which is in a part is a part of that whole which consists of parts. For if it is a part, it is a part of a certain whole, and it is either a part of the whole which it contains, according to which it is said to be a whole in a part, but thus it will be a part of itself, the part will be equal to the whole, and each will be the same; or it is a part of a certain other whole, and if of some other, it is either the only part of that, and thus again it will in no respect differ from the whole, being one part of one thing; or it is a part in conjunction with another part. For of every whole the parts are more than one, and that will be a whole from many parts of which it consists. And thus the whole which is in a part is a part of the whole which consists of parts. PROPOSITION LXIX. Every whole which consists of parts participates of the wholeness which is prior to parts. For if it consists of parts, the whole is passive, i.e., the whole participates of another whole. For the parts becoming one are passive to a whole on account of their union, and the whole subsists in parts which are not wholes. But the imparticipable subsists prior to everything which is participated. The imparticipable wholeness, therefore, subsists prior to that which is participated. Hence there is a certain form of wholeness prior to the whole which consists of parts, which is not passive to a whole, but is wholeness itself, and from which the wholeness consisting of parts is derived. For the whole, indeed, which consists of parts, subsists in many places, and in many things, in various ways. It is, however, necessary that there should be a monad essentially of all totalities. For neither is each of these wholes genuine, since it is indigent of parts that are not wholes, of which it consists; nor is the whole which is in a certain thing capable of being the cause of wholeness to all other things. Hence that which is the cause to all wholes of their being wholes is prior to parts. For if this also consisted of parts, it would be a certain whole, and not simply whole. And again, this would be from another whole, and so on to infinity. Or it will subsist on account of that which is primarily a whole, and which is not a whole from parts, but is a wholeness. PROPOSITION LXX. Everything which is more total among principal causes illuminates participants, prior to partial natures, and when these fail, still continues to impart its illuminations. For it begins its energy upon secondary natures prior to that which is posterior to it, and is present in conjunction with the presence of it. When likewise that which is posterior to it no longer energizes, it is still present, and that which is more causal continues to energize; and this not only in different subjects, but likewise in each of the natures that sometimes participate. Thus it is necessary, for instance, that being should be first generated, afterwards animal, and afterwards man. And man indeed is not, if the rational power is absent, but there is still animal, breathing and sentient; and again, life failing, being remains. For though a thing does not live, yet it has existence, and there is a similar reasoning in all things. The cause, however, of this is, that the more causal nature being more efficacious, energizes on the thing caused prior to that which is less causal. For the thing caused participates first of that which is more powerful, and that which is secondary again energizing that which is more powerful energizes with it, because everything which the secondary nature produces, that which is more causal produces likewise in conjunction with it. When the former also fails, the latter is still present. For the communication of the more powerful cause, operating in a greater degree, leaves that which participates it, posterior to the energy of the less powerful cause. For through the communication of the secondary nature, it corroborates its own illumination. PROPOSITION LXXI. All things which among principal causes possess a more total and higher order in their effects, according to the illuminations proceeding from them, become in a certain respect subjects to the communications of more partial causes. And the illuminations indeed from higher causes receive the progressions from secondary causes, but the latter are established in the former. And thus some participations precede others, and some representations extend after others, beginning from on high to the same subject, more total causes having a prior energy, but such as are more partial, supplying their participants with their communications, posterior to the energies of more total causes. For if more causal natures energize prior to such as are secondary on account of exuberance of power, and are present with those that have a more imperfect aptitude, and illuminate them also, but things more subordinate, and which are second in order, are supplied from such as are more causal, it is evident that the illuminations of superior natures antecedently comprehend that which participates of both these, and give stability to the communications of things subordinate. But these illuminations of superior causes employ the resemblances of subordinate natures as foundations, and operate on that which participates of them, the superior causes themselves having a prior energy. PROPOSITION LXXII. All things which in their participants have the relation of a subject proceed from more perfect and total causes. For the causes of a greater number of effects are more powerful and total, and are nearer to the one than the causes of fewer effects. But the natures which give subsistence to such things as are antecedently the subjects of others, are among causes the sources of a greater number of effects. Corollary. From hence it is evident why matter, which derives its subsistence from the one, is of itself destitute of form, and why body, though it participates of being, is of itself without the participation of soul. For matter, being the subject of all things, proceeds from the cause of all. But body, being the subject of animation, derives its subsistence from that which is more total than soul, and participates after a certain manner of being. PROPOSITION LXXIII. Every whole is at the same time a certain being, and participates of being, but not every being is a whole. For either being and whole are the same, or the one is prior, but the other posterior. If however a part, so far as it is a part, is being, for a whole is from parts which have a being, yet it is not of itself also a whole. Being therefore and whole are not the same. For if this were the case, a part would be a non-entity. But if a part was a non-entity, the whole would have no existence. For every whole is a whole of parts, either as existing prior to them, and therefore causally containing them in itself, or as subsisting in them. But the part not existing, neither is it possible for the whole to exist. If, however, whole is prior to being, every being will immediately be a whole. Again, therefore, there will not be a part. This, however, is impossible. For if the whole is a whole, being the whole of a part, the part also being a part will be the part of the whole. It remains, therefore, that every whole indeed is being, but that not every being is a whole. Corollary. From these things it is evident that being, which has a primary subsistence, is beyond wholeness. For the one indeed, videre licet, being is present with a greater number of things, since to be is present with parts so far as they are parts. But the other, videre licet, wholeness, is present with a less number of things. For that which is the cause of a greater number of effects is more excellent, but the cause of a less number is of a subordinate nature, as has been demonstrated. PROPOSITION LXXIV. Every form is a certain whole, for it consists of many things, each of which gives completion to the form, but not every whole is a form. For a particular thing is a whole, and also an individual. So far it is an individual, but neither of them is a form. For every whole consists of parts, but form is that which may be divided into individual forms. Whole, therefore, is one thing, and form another, and the one is present with many things, but the other with a few. Hence, whole is above the forms of beings. Corollary. From these things it is evident that whole has a middle order between being and forms, and hence it follows that being subsists prior to forms, and that forms are beings, but that not every being is form. Whence also, in effects, privations are in a certain respect beings, but are no longer forms, and in consequence of the unical power of being, they also receive a certain obscure representation of being. PROPOSITION LXXV. Every cause which is properly so called is exempt from its effect. For if it is in the effect, it either gives completion to it, or is in a certain respect indigent of it, in order to its existence, and thus it will be more imperfect than the thing caused. For being in the effect, it is rather a concause than a cause, and is either a part of that which is generated, or an instrument of the maker. For that which is a part in the thing generated is more imperfect than the whole. The cause also, which is in the effect, is an instrument of generation to the maker, being unable to define of itself the measures of production. Every cause, therefore, which is properly so denominated, if it is more perfect than that which proceeds from it, imparts to its effect the measure of generation, and is exempt from instruments and elements, and in short, from everything which is called a concause. PROPOSITION LXXVI. Everything which is generated from an immovable cause has an immutable hyparxis, but everything which is generated from a movable cause has a mutable hyparxis. For if that which makes is entirely immovable, it does not produce from itself that which is secondary through motion, but by its very being. If, however, this be the case, it has that which proceeds from it concurrent with its own essence. And if this also be the case, it will produce as long as it exists. But it exists always, and therefore it always gives subsistence to that which is posterior to itself. Hence, this is always generated from thence, and always is, conjoining with the ever according to energy of the cause, its own ever according to progression. If, however, the cause is moved, that also which is generated from it will be essentially mutable. For that which has its being through motion changes its being when its movable cause is changed. For if, though produced from motion, it should itself remain immutable, it would be better than its producing cause. This, however, is impossible. It will not, therefore, be immutable. Hence it will be mutable, and will be essentially moved, imitating the motion of that which gave it subsistence. PROPOSITION LXXVII. Everything which is in capacity proceeds from that which is in energy, and that which is in capacity proceeds into energy. That also which is in a certain respect in capacity, so far as it is in capacity, is the offspring of that which is in a certain respect in energy. But that which is all things in capacity proceeds from that which is all things in energy. For that which is in capacity is not naturally adapted to produce itself into energy, because it is imperfect. For if being imperfect, it should become the cause to itself of perfection, and this in energy, the cause will be more imperfect than that which is produced by it. Hence that which is in capacity, so far as it is in capacity, will not be the cause to itself of a subsistence in energy. For on this hypothesis, so far as it is imperfect, it would be the cause of perfection. Since everything which is in capacity, so far as it is in capacity, is imperfect, but that which is in energy is perfect. Hence, if that which was in capacity becomes in energy, it will have its perfection from something else. And this will either be in capacity, but thus again the imperfect will be generative of the perfect, or it will be in energy, and either something else, or this which was in capacity will be that which becomes in energy. But if something else which is in energy produces, operating according to its own peculiarity, it will not, by being in capacity, make that which is in another to be in energy, nor will this which is now made to be in energy, unless it becomes this so far as it was in capacity. It remains, therefore, that from that which is in energy, that which is in capacity must be changed into energy. PROPOSITION LXXVIII. Every power is either perfect or imperfect. For the power which is prolific of energy is perfect, for it makes other things to be perfect through its own energies. That, however, which is perfective of other things is in a greater degree perfect, as being more self-perfect. But the power which is indigent of another, that pre-exists in energy, according to which indigence it is something in capacity, is imperfect. For it is indigent of the perfection which is in another, in order that by participating of it, it may become perfect. Hence, such a power as this is of itself imperfect, so that the power of that which is in energy is perfect, being prolific of energy, but the power of that which is in capacity is imperfect, and obtains perfection from the power which is in energy. PROPOSITION LXXIX. Every thing which is generated from a twofold power. For it is requisite that the thing generated should possess aptitude and an imperfect power, and that which makes being in energy, that which the thing generated is in capacity, antecedently comprehends a perfect power. For all energy proceeds from inherent power. For if that which makes did not possess power, how could it energize and produce something else? And if that which is generated did not possess power according to aptitude, how could it be generated? For that which makes or acts in that which is able to suffer, but not in any casual thing, and which is not naturally adapted to suffer from the agent. End of Proposition 79. Propositions 80 to 99 of The Elements of Theology by Proclus, translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proposition 80. Every body is naturally adapted of itself to suffer, but everything incorporeal to act. And the former indeed is essentially inefficacious, but the latter is impassive. That which is incorporeal, however, suffers through its communion with body, just as bodies are able to act through the participation of incorporeals. For body, so far as body is alone divisible, and through this becomes passive, being entirely partible, and this to infinity. But that which is incorporeal, being simple, is impassive. For neither is that which is impartible capable of being divided, nor can that be changed in quality which is not compounded. Either therefore nothing will be effective, or this must be affirmed of an incorporeal nature, since body, so far as body, does not act, because it is alone liable to be divided, and to suffer. For everything which acts has an effective power, so that body, so far as it is body, will not act, but so far as it contains in itself a power of acting. Hence, when it acts through the participation of power. Moreover, incorporeal natures, when they are inherent in bodies, participate of passions, being divided together with bodies, and enjoying their partible nature, though according to their own essence they are impartible. Proposition 81. Everything which is participated in a separable manner is present with its participant by a certain inseparable power which it inserts in it. For if it is itself present with the participant in a separate manner, and is not in it, as if it possessed its subsistence in it, a certain medium between the two is necessary, connecting the one with the other, and which is more similar to that which is participated, and subsists in the participant. For if this medium is separable, how can it be participated by the participant, since the participant neither contains the medium, nor anything proceeding from it? A power, therefore, and illumination proceeding from that which is separable into the participant conjoins both. Hence, one of these will be that through which the participation is effected, another will be that which is participated, and another that which participates. Proposition 82. Everything incorporeal which is converted to itself, when it is participated by other things, is participated in a separable manner. For if in an inseparable manner, the energy of it would not be separate from its participant, as neither would its essence. If, however, this were the case, it would not be converted to itself. For, being converted, it will be separate from its participant, each being different from the other. If, therefore, it is able to be converted to itself, it will be participated in a separable manner, when it is participated by other things. Proposition 83. Every thing which has a knowledge of itself is entirely converted to itself. For, knowing itself, it is evident that it is converted to itself in energy. For that which knows and that which is known are one, and the knowledge of itself is directed to itself as to that which is known. This knowledge also, as pertaining to that which knows, is a certain energy, but it is the knowledge of itself directed to itself, because it is gnostic of itself. Moreover, that it is converted to itself essentially, if it is so in energy, has been demonstrated. For every thing which by energizing is converted to itself, has also an essence verging to and subsisting in itself. Proposition 84. Every thing which always is, possesses an infinite power. For if its hypostasis is never failing, the power also according to which it is that which it is, and is able to exist, is infinite. For the power of existing being finite, it will some time or other fail. But this failing, the existence also of that which possesses it will fail, and it will no longer be that which always is. It is necessary, therefore, that the power of that which always is, and which connects and contains it essentially, should be infinite. Proposition 85. Everything which is always becoming to be, or rising into existence, (aiginomenon), possesses an infinite power of becoming to be. For if it is always rising into existence, the power of generation in it is never failing. For if this power was finite, it would cease in an infinite time. But the power of becoming to be ceasing, that which is rising into being according to this power would cease, and thus it would no longer be always becoming to be. It is, however, supposed to be always becoming to be. Hence it possesses an infinite power of rising into existence. Proposition 86. Everything which is truly being, ontos on, is infinite, neither according to multitude, nor according to magnitude, but according to power alone. For every infinite is either in discrete, or in continued quantity, or in power. But that which always is infinite, as having an inextinguishable life, a never failing hyparxis, and an undiminished energy. That which is eternally being, however, is neither infinite on account of magnitude, for that which is truly being is without magnitude, being self-subsistent, since everything self-subsistent is impartible and simple. Nor is it infinite on account of multitude, for it has in the most eminent degree the form of the One, as being arranged most near, and being most allied to it. But it is infinite according to power. Hence it is also impartible and infinite. And by how much the more it is one and impartible, by so much the more is it infinite. For the power which is divided becomes imbecile and finite, and powers which are entirely divided are in every respect finite. For ultimate powers, and which are most remote from the One, are in a certain respect finite, on account of their distribution into parts. But first powers, on account of their impartibility, are infinite. For a separation into parts divulses and dissolves the power of everything, but impartibility compressing and contracting that which it contains renders it never failing and undiminished in itself. Moreover, infinity, according to magnitude, and also according to multitude, is entirely a privation and falling off from impartibility. For that which is finite is most near to the impartible, but the infinite is most remote from it, entirely departing from the One. Hence, that which is infinite according to power is not infinite either according to multitude or magnitude, since infinite power subsists in conjunction with impartibility. But the infinite either in multitude or magnitude is most remote from the impartible. If, therefore, that which is truly being was infinite either in magnitude or multitude, it would not possess infinite power. It does, however, possess infinite power, and therefore is not infinite either according to multitude or according to magnitude. PROPOSITION LXXXVII. Everything eternal indeed is being, but not every being is eternal. For the participation of being is present in a certain respect with generated natures, so far as each of these is not that which in no respect is. But if that which is generated is not entirely deprived of being, it is in a certain respect being. The eternal, however, is in no respect whatever present with generated natures, and especially not with such of these as do not even participate of the perpetuity which subsists according to the whole of time. Moreover, everything eternal always is, for it participates of eternity, which imparts to the natures by which it is participated to be always that which they are. Being, therefore, is participated by a greater number of things than eternity, and hence being is beyond eternity. For by those natures by whom eternity is participated, being is also participated. But not everything which participates of being participates also of eternity. PROPOSITION LXXXVIII. Everything which is truly being is either prior to eternity, or in eternity, or participates of eternity. For that there is true being prior to eternity has been demonstrated. But true being is also in eternity. For eternity possesses the always in conjunction with being. And that which participates of eternity has both the always and being according to participation. Eternity, however, possesses the always primarily, but being according to participation. But being itself is primarily being. PROPOSITION LXXXIX. Everything which is primarily being consists of bound and infinity. For if it possesses infinite power, it is evident that it is infinite, and on this account consists from the infinite. If also it is impartible, and has the form of the One, through this it participates of bound, for that which participates of unity is bounded. Moreover, it is impartible, and therefore possesses infinite power. Hence everything which is truly or primarily being consists of bound and infinity. PROPOSITION XC. The first bound and the first infinity subsist by themselves prior to everything which consists of bound and the infinite. For if beings which subsist by themselves are prior to those which are certain beings, as being common to all essences and principal causes, and not the causes of certain, but in short of all beings, it is necessary that the first bound and the first infinity should be prior to that which consists of both these. For the bound, in that which is mixed, or the first being, participates of infinity, and the infinite participates of bound. But of everything, that which is the first is nothing else than that which it is. It is not therefore proper that the first infinite should have the form of bound, or that the first bound should have the form of infinity. These therefore subsist primarily prior to that which is mixed. PROPOSITION XCI. Every power is either finite or infinite, but every finite power indeed derives its subsistence from infinite power, and infinite power subsists from the first infinity. For the powers which have an existence at a certain time are finite, falling from the infinity of existing always. But the powers of eternal beings are infinite, never deserting their own hyparxis. PROPOSITION XCII. Every multitude of infinite powers is suspended from one first infinity, which does not subsist as a participated power, nor in things which are endued with power, but subsists by itself, not being the power of a certain participant, but the cause of all beings. For though the first being possesses power, yet it is not power itself, for it has also bound. But the first power is infinity. For infinite powers are infinite through the participation of infinity. Infinity itself, therefore, will be prior to all powers, through which being also possesses infinite power, and all things participate of infinity. For infinity is not the first of things, or the ineffable principle of all, since that is the measure of all things, being the good and the one. Nor is infinity being, for this is infinite, but not infinity. Hence infinity subsists between that which is first and being, and is the cause of all infinite powers, and of all the infinity that is in beings. PROPOSITION XCIII. Every infinite which is in true beings is neither infinite to the natures that are above beings, nor is it infinite to itself. For that by which each thing is infinite, by this also it exists uncircumscribed. But everything which is in true beings is bounded by itself, and by all the things prior to it. It remains therefore that the infinite which is in true beings is infinite to subordinate natures alone, above which it is so expanded in power as to be incomprehensible by all of them. For in whatever manner they may extend themselves towards this infinite, yet it has something entirely exempt from them. And though all things enter into it, yet it has something occult and incomprehensible by secondary natures. Though likewise it evolves the powers which it contains, yet it possesses something on account of its union insurmountable, contracted, and surpassing the evolution of beings. Since, however, it contains and bounds itself, it will not be infinite to itself, nor much less to the natures situated above it, since it has a portion of the infinity which is in them. For the powers of more total natures are more infinite in consequence of being more total, and having an arrangement nearer to the first infinity. PROPOSITION XCIV. Every perpetuity is indeed a certain infinity, but not every infinity is perpetuity. For there are many infinites which have the infinite not on account of the always, such for instance as the infinity according to magnitude, the infinity according to multitude, and the infinity of matter, and whatever else there may be of the like kind, which is infinite, either because it cannot be passed over, or through the indefiniteness of its essence. That perpetuity, however, is a certain infinity is evident. For that which never fails is infinite. But this is that which always has its hypostasis inexhaustible. Infinity, therefore, is prior to perpetuity. For that which gives subsistence to a greater number of effects, and is more total, is more causal. Hence, the first infinity is beyond eternity, and infinity itself is prior to eternity. Proposition 95. Every power which is more single is more infinite than that which is multiplied. For if of powers the first infinity is nearest to the one, that power which is more allied to the one is in a greater degree infinite than that which recedes from it. For being multiplied, it loses the form of the one, in which, while it remained, it possessed a transcendency with respect to other powers, being connected and contained through its impartibility. For in partible natures themselves, the powers, when congregated, are united, but when divided, they are increased in number and become obscured. Proposition 96. The power which is infinite of every finite body is incorporeal. For if it were corporeal, if this body indeed is finite, the infinite will be contained in the finite. But if the body is infinite, it will not be power so far as it is body. For if so far as it is body it is finite, but power is infinite, it will not be power so far as it is body. Hence the power which is infinite in a finite body is incorporeal. Proposition 97. In each series of things, every cause which has the relation of a leader imparts to the whole series the peculiarity of itself, and that which the cause is primarily, the series is according to diminution. For if it is the leader of the whole series, and all coordinate natures are co-arranged with reference to it, it is evident that it imparts to all that the series contains the one idea according to which they are arranged in that series. For either all things partake of similitude to this cause without a cause, or that which is the same in all is derived from it. But the former of these is impossible, for that which is without a cause is also fortuitous. But the fortuitous can never take place in things in which there is order, connection, and an invariable sameness of subsistence. From the cause, therefore, which ranks as a leader, every series receives the peculiarity of the hypostasis of that cause. But if from it, it is evident that this is accompanied with a diminution and decrement adapted to secondary natures. For either the peculiarity exists similarly in the leader and the natures that are secondary, and how in this case can the former be the leader, but the latter be allotted an hypostasis after the leader, or it exists dissimilarly. And if this be the case, it is evident that sameness is derived to the multitude from one thing, but not vice versa. And the illustrious peculiarity of the series, which is primarily in one thing, or the leader, is secondarily in the multitude, suspended from the leading cause. Proposition 98. Every separate cause is at one and the same time everywhere and nowhere. For by the communication of its own power it is everywhere. For this is a cause which replenishes the natures that are naturally adapted to participate of it, rules over all secondary beings, and is present to all things by the prolific progressions of its illuminations. But by an essence unmingled with things in place, and by its exempt purity, it is nowhere. For if it is separate, it is established above all things. In a similar manner also, it is in no one of the natures inferior to itself. For if it was alone everywhere, it would not indeed be prevented from being a cause, and from subsisting in all its participants, but it would not be prior to all of them in a separate manner. If also it was nowhere without being everywhere, it would not indeed be prevented from being prior to all things, and from being nothing pertaining to subordinate natures. But it would not be in all things, as causes are naturally adapted to be in their effects, by the abundant and unenvying communications of themselves. In order, therefore, that existing as a cause, it may be in all things that are able to partake of it, and that being separate in itself, it may be prior to all the natures that are filled by it, it is everywhere and at the same time nowhere. And it is not indeed partly everywhere and partly nowhere. For thus it would be divulsed, and separate from itself, if one part of it was everywhere in all things, but another was nowhere, and prior to all things. But the whole of it is everywhere, and in a similar manner nowhere. For the things which are able to participate of it, meet with the whole of it, and find the whole present with themselves, that at the same time being wholly exempt from them. For the participant does not place this separate cause in itself, but participates of it as much as it is capable of receiving. Nor in the communication of itself does it become contracted by the multitude of the participations of it, for it is separate. Nor do its participants participate of it defectively, for that which imparts is everywhere. PROPOSITION XCIX. Every imparticipable, so far as it is imparticipable, does not derive its subsistence from another cause, but it is itself the principle and cause of all its participants. And thus every principle in each series is unbegotten. For if it is imparticipable in its own proper series, it is allotted the principality, and does not proceed from other things. For it would no longer be the first, if it received this peculiarity, according to which it is imparticipable, from something else. But if it is inferior to other things, and proceeds from them, it does not proceed from them so far as it is imparticipable, but so far as it participates. For of the things from which it originates, it doubtless participates, and it is not primarily the things of which it participates. Hence, it is not from a cause, so far as it is imparticipable. For so far as it is from a cause, it participates, and is not imparticipable. But so far as it is imparticipable, it is the cause of things that are participated, and is not itself a participant of other things. End of Proposition 99. Propositions 100 to 119 of the Elements of Theology by Proclus. Translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proposition 100. Every series of wholes is extended to an imparticipable cause and principle, but all imparticipables are suspended from the one principle of all things. For if each series suffers something which is the same, or a certain sameness, there is something in each which is the leader, and the cause of this sameness. For as all beings are from unity, so every series is from unity. But again, all imparticipable monads are referred to the One, because all of them are analogous to the One. So far, therefore, as they also suffer something which is the same through an analogy to the One, so far a reduction of them to the One is effected. And so far indeed as all of them are from the One, no one of these is a principle. But so far as each is imparticipable, so far each is a principle. Hence, being the principles of certain things, they are suspended from the principle of all things. For that is the principle of all things of which all things participate. All things, however, alone entirely participate of the first. But of other things, not all, but certain things participate. Hence also that id est, the ineffable, is simply the first, but other things are firsts with reference to a certain thing, but simply are not firsts. Proposition 101. Imparticipable intellect is the leader of all things that participate of intellect; imparticipable life of all things that participate of life; and imparticipable being of all things that participate of being. But of these, being is prior to life, but life is prior to intellect. For because in each series of beings, imparticipables are prior to things which are participated, it is necessary that intellect should be prior to intellectuals, that life should be prior to vital natures, and that being itself should be prior to beings. Because, however, that which is the cause of a greater number of effects precedes that which is the cause of a less number, hence, among these, being will be the first, for it is present with all things to which life and intellect are present. For everything that lives and participates of intelligence necessarily is, but not vice versa. For many beings neither live nor energize intellectually, but life is the second. For all things that participate of intellect participate also of life, but not vice versa. For many things live indeed, but are left destitute of knowledge, and intellect is the third. For everything which is in any manner whatever Gnostic also lives and is. If, therefore, being is the cause of a greater number of effects, but life of a less number, and intellect of still fewer effects, being is the first, life the second, and intellect the third. Proposition 102. All beings which exist in any manner whatever consist of bound and the infinite through that which is primarily being. But all living beings are motive of themselves through the first life, and all Gnostic beings participate of knowledge through the first intellect. For if that which is imparticipable in each series imparts its own peculiarity to all the natures under the same series, it is evident that the first being also imparts to all things bound, and at the same time infinity, since it is itself primarily mixed from these. Life also imparts to all things the motion which it possesses in itself. For life is the first progression and motion from the stable hypostasis of being, and intellect imparts knowledge to all things. For the summit of all knowledge is in intellect, and intellect is the first Gnostic nature. Proposition 103. All things are in all, but appropriately in each. For in being there is life and intellect, and in life being and intellection, and in intellect being and life. But in intellect indeed all things subsist intellectually, in life vitally, and in being all things are truly beings. For since everything subsists either according to cause, or according to hyparxis, or according to participation, and in the first the rest are according to cause, in the second the first is according to participation, but the third according to cause, and in the third the natures prior to it are according to participation, this being the case, life and intellect have a prior or causal subsistence in being. Since, however, each thing is characterized according to hyparxis, and neither according to cause, for cause pertains to other things, i.e. to effects, nor according to participation, for a thing derives that elsewhere of which it participates. Hence, in being, there is truly life and intellection, essential life and essential intellect. And in life there is being indeed according to participation, but intellection according to cause. Each of these, however, subsist there vitally, for the hyparxis is according to life, and in intellect life and essence subsist according to participation, and each of these subsists there intellectually. For knowledge is the essence and the life of intellect. Proposition 104. Everything which is primarily eternal has both its essence and its energy eternal. For if it primarily participates of the perpetuity of eternity, it does not partially participate of it, but entirely. For either it participates of it in energy, but not in essence. This, however, is impossible, since in this case energy would be more excellent than essence. Or it participates of it according to essence, but does not participate of it according to energy. In this case, however, that which is primarily eternal and that which primarily participates of time will be the same, and time indeed will primarily measure the essence of certain things, but eternity, which is more excellent than all time, will not measure the essence of anything, if that which is primarily eternal is not essentially contained by eternity. Hence, everything which is primarily eternal has both an eternal essence and energy. Proposition 105. Everything immortal is perpetual, but not everything perpetual is immortal. For if the immortal is that which always participates of life, but that which always participates of life participates also of being, and that which always lives always is, hence everything immortal is perpetual. But the immortal is that which is unreceptive of death, and always lives, and the perpetual is that which is unreceptive of non-being, and always is. If, however, there are many beings, more and less excellent than life, which are unreceptive of death, but exist always, if this be the case, not everything which is perpetual is immortal. That, however, there are many beings not immortal that exist always is evident. For there are certain beings indeed which are destitute of life, but which exist always and are indestructible. For as being is to life, so is the perpetual to the immortal. For the life which cannot be taken away is immortal, and the being which cannot be taken away is perpetual. But being is more comprehensive than life, and therefore the perpetual is more comprehensive than the immortal. PROPOSITION CVI. The medium of everything which is entirely eternal, both in essence and energy, and of everything which has its essence in time, is that which is partly indeed eternal, and partly is measured by time. For that which has its essence comprehended by time is entirely temporal. For by a much greater priority, this will be allotted a temporal energy. But that which is entirely temporal is in every respect dissimilar to that which is entirely eternal. But all progressions are through similars. Hence, there is something between these. The medium, therefore, is either that which is eternal in essence, but temporal in energy, or vice versa. This latter, however, is impossible, for energy would be more excellent than essence. It remains, therefore, that the medium is the former of these. PROPOSITION CVII. Everything which is partly eternal and partly temporal is at one and the same time being and generation. For everything eternal is being, and that which is measured by time is generation, so that if the same thing participates of time and eternity, yet not according to the same, it will be both being and generation. Corollary. From these things it is evident that generation indeed, having a temporal essence, is suspended from that which partly partakes of being, and partly of generation, participating at once of eternity and time. But this is suspended from that which is in every respect eternal, and that which is in every respect eternal is suspended from being, which is prior to the eternal. PROPOSITION CVIII. Every thing which is partial in each order is able to participate in a twofold respect of the monad which is in the proximately superior order, viz., either through its own wholeness, or through that which is partial in the superior order, and coordinate with the thing according to an analogy to the whole series. For if conversion is to all things through similitude, that which is partial in an inferior order is dissimilar to that which is monadic and a whole in a superior order, and in short, is as that which is partial to a whole, and as one order to another. But a partial nature is similar to a whole of the same series, through a communion of peculiarity, and to the proximately superior coordinate peculiarity through an analogous subsistence. It is evident, therefore, that through these media a conversion from one to the other is effected, as through similars to that which is similar. For the one is similar as the partial to that which is partial, but the other as that which is the appropriate of the same series. But the whole of the superior series is dissimilar in both these respects. PROPOSITION CIX. Every partial intellect participates of the unity which is above intellect, and the first, both through the intellect which ranks as a whole, and through the partial unity which is coordinate with this partial intellect. Every partial soul, likewise, participates of the intellect which is a whole, through the soul which ranks as a whole, and through a partial intellect. And every partial nature of body participates of the soul which is a whole, through the wholeness of nature and a partial soul. For everything partial participates of the monad, which is in a superior order, either through its proper wholeness, or through that which is partial in that order, and which is coordinate to the thing. PROPOSITION CX. Of all the things that are arranged in each series, such as are first, and are conjoined with their monad, are able to participate of the natures which are proximately established in the superior series, through analogy; but such as are more imperfect and remote from their proper principle, are not naturally adapted to enjoy these natures. For because such things as are first are allied to those in a superior series, being allotted a better and more divine nature in the order to which they belong; but such things as are more imperfect proceed further from their principle, and are allotted a secondary and ministrant, but not a primary and leading progression in the whole series. This being the case, the former are necessarily connascently conjoined to the things in a superior order, but the latter are unadapted to be conjoined with them. For all things are not of an equal dignity, though they may belong to the same order. For there is not one and the same ratio in all, but all things proceed from their proper monad, as from one, and with reference to one thing. Hence they are not allotted the same power; but some things are able to receive proximately the participations of superior natures, while others, being dissimilar to them by proceeding to a greater distance from their principles, are deprived of a power of this kind. PROPOSITION CXI. Of every intellectual series, some things are divine intellects, receiving the participations of the Gods; but others are intellects alone. And of every psychical series, some things are intellectual souls, suspended from their proper intellects; but others are souls alone. Of all corporeal natures, likewise, some have souls supernally presiding over them; but others are natures alone, destitute of the presence of souls. For of each series, not the whole genus is adapted to be suspended from that which is prior to itself, but that which is more perfect in it, and sufficient to be connascent with superior natures. Neither, therefore, is every intellect suspended from Deity, but those intellects only which are supreme and most single; for these are allied to the divine unities. Nor do all souls participate of participable intellect, but such only as are most intellectual. Nor do all corporeal natures enjoy the presence of soul, and of the soul which is participated; but those only that are more perfect, and possess in a greater degree the form of reason. And this is the mode of demonstration in all things. PROPOSITION CXII. Of every order, those things that are first have the form of the natures prior to them. For the highest genera in each order are conjoined through similitude to the natures placed above them, and through the connection and coherence of the progression of wholes. Hence such as the superior natures are primarily, such also is the form which these highest genera are allotted, and which is allied to the nature of those in the superior order. They are also such according to the peculiarity of subsistence as are the natures prior to them. PROPOSITION CXIII. Every divine number is unical. For if a divine number has a precedaneous cause, videre licet the One, just as an intellectual number has intellect, and a psychical number soul, and if multitude is everywhere analogous to its cause, it is evident that a divine number is unical, since the One is God. But this follows, since the One and the Good are the same, for the Good and God are the same. For that beyond which there is nothing, and after which all things aspire, is God; and also that from which all things proceed, and to which all things tend. But this is good. If, therefore, there is a multitude of Gods, the multitude is unical. But that there is evident. For every principal cause is the leader of an appropriate multitude, which is similar and allied to the cause. PROPOSITION CXIV. Every God is a self-perfect unity, and every self-perfect unity is a God. For if the number of unities is twofold, as has been before demonstrated, and some are self-perfect, but others are illuminations from the self-perfect unities, and if a divine number is allied to and connatural with the One and the Good, the Gods are self-perfect unities. And vice versa, if there is a self-perfect unity, it is a God. For as unity is in the most eminent degree allied to the One, and the self-perfect to the Good, so likewise, according to both these, the self-perfect participates of the divine peculiarity, and is a God. But if a God was a unity, yet not a self-perfect unity, or a self-perfect hypostasis, yet not a unity, he would be arranged in another order, on account of the mutation of the peculiarity. PROPOSITION CXV. Every God is superessential, supervital, and superintellectual. For if each is a self-perfect unity, but neither being, life, or intellect is a unity, but that which is united, it is evident that every God is beyond each of these. For if these differ from each other, but all are in all, each of these being all will not be one only. Farther still, if the first God is superessential, but every God is of the series of the first, so far as a God, each will be superessential. But that the first God is superessential is evident. For essence is not the same with unity, nor is to exist the same thing as to be united. If, however, these are not the same, either the first God is both these, and in this case he will not be one only, but something else besides the one, and will participate of unity, but will not be the One itself, or he is one of these. But if indeed he is essence, he will be indigent of the One. It is, however, impossible that the Good and the first should be indigent. Hence, he is one alone, and therefore superessential. But if each thing imparts the peculiarity of that which it is primarily to the whole series, of which it is the leader. Hence every divine number is superessential, since every principal cause produces similars prior to dissimilars. If therefore the first God is superessential, all the gods will be superessential, for they will be entirely similar to the first. Since, however, they are also essences, they will be produced from the first essence as the monads of essences. Proposition 116. Every deity except the One is participable. For that the One is imparticipable is evident, since if it were participated, and on this account pertained to something else, it would no longer be similarly the cause of all things, both of such as are prior to beings, and of beings themselves. But that the other unities are participated, we shall thus demonstrate. For if there is another imparticipable unity after the first, in what does it differ from the One? For either it subsists after the same manner as that, and how in this case is the one the second, but the other first? Or it does not subsist after the same manner, and thus one of these will be the One itself, but the other one, and not one. This non-one also, if it is no hypostasis whatever, will be one alone. But if it is a certain other hypostasis besides the one, in this case the one will be participated by the non-one, and that will be a self-perfect one, which conjoins the non-one with the one, so that again God will be this, viz. The One, so far as he is God. But that which is non-one will subsist in the participation of the One. Every unity, therefore, which subsists after the One is participable, and every God is participable. Proposition 117. Every God is the measure of beings. For if every God is unical, he defines and measures all the multitude of beings. For all multitudes, being in their own nature indefinite, are bounded through the One. But that which is one being, or being characterized by the One, measuring and terminating the natures with which it is present, leads into bound that which according to its own power is not bounded. For the one being has the form of the One by participation. But that which is uniform, or has the form of the One, recedes from indefiniteness and infinity. And by how much the more uniform it is, by so much the less is it indefinite and without measure. Every multitude of beings, therefore, is measured by the divine unities. Proposition 118. Everything which is in the Gods pre-exists in them according to their peculiarities, and the peculiarity of the Gods is unical and superessential. Hence, all things are contained in them unically and superessentially. For if everything subsists in a threefold manner, viz. Either according to cause, or according to hyparxis, or according to participation, but the first number of all things is the divine number, nothing will be in the Gods according to participation, but all things will subsist in them either according to hyparxis or according to cause. Such things, however, as they antecedently comprehend, as being the causes of all things, they antecedently comprehend in a manner appropriate to their own union. For everything which is the leader of secondary natures causally contains the cause of things subordinate in a way naturally adapted to itself. All things, therefore, are in the Gods unically and superessentially. PROPOSITION CXIX. Every God subsists according to superessential goodness, and is good neither according to participation, nor according to essence, but superessentially, since habits and essences are allotted a secondary and manifold order from the Gods. For if the first God is the One and the Good, and so far as he is the One, he is also the Good, and so far as the Good, the One, if this be the case, every series of the Gods has the form of the One, and the form of the Good, according to one peculiarity, and each of the Gods is not a unity and goodness according to anything else; but each, so far as he is a unity, so far he is a goodness, and so far as he is a goodness, so far he is a unity. So far also as the Gods posterior to the first God proceed from the first, they have the form of the Good, and the form of the One, since the first is the One and the Good. But so far as all of them are Gods, they are unities and goodnesses. As therefore the One of the Gods is superessential, so likewise is their goodness, since it is nothing else than the One. For each of them is not anything else than the Good, but is good alone, as neither is each anything else than the One, but is one alone. End of Proposition 119.